How do you really get inside the mind of someone who built a nation? Well, today we're going to try. We're diving into the personal library of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, the founder of the Turkish Republic, to see if we can uncover the intellectual blueprint he used to literally create a country from the ground up. I mean, just think about that question for a second. It is one of the biggest political challenges imaginable. Where do you even start? What examples do you look to? And maybe more importantly, what mistakes do you try to avoid? For Atatürk, this wasn't some academic exercise. Finding the answers was a matter of national survival.
And you know, the clues to his thinking are right here. Not just in the books he owned, but in the ones he read, underlined, and basically argued with. His library wasn't just some collection of books on a shelf. It was a workshop. These notes, these lines in the margins, they're like the fossilized footprints of his mind at work.
So, let's step into that workshop. The best way to think about Atatürk is as an architect. And before you draw up the blueprint for a huge new building, in this case the Turkish Republic, you first have to study all the great structures of the past.
And this was absolutely not casual reading. No, this was a systematic, almost scientific investigation. He scoured world history, looking for universal principles, for models of government, and especially for cautionary tales. His goal was intensely practical: find a working model for a modern state.
So, where does an architect like that even begin? Well, you start with the foundation, right? Atatürk went all the way back to the very beginning, to the dawn of civilization itself, trying to find the absolute core principles of how societies get organized.
And his search was just incredibly broad. He wasn't just looking at the usual suspects like Greece and Rome. No way. As you can see from these books, he was just as interested in the inner workings of ancient Egypt or the long, complicated history of China's dynasties. He was casting the widest possible net for knowledge. And what's so fascinating here is how fundamental he's thinking. He's reading about the very first Sumerian settlements. And look at what he underlines: the exact moment they create new and important institutions. He's literally looking at state building from square one.
Now, it's one thing to read about big, abstract ideas like institutions, but Atatürk's mind was also drawn to the really practical stuff. He wanted to know how these ancient states actually worked on a day-to-day basis.
And this is a perfect illustration of that. He comes across this word nome, which is just an ancient Egyptian administrative district, kind of like a province, a simple word, but he underlines it. Why? Because it represents a building block. It's about how you divide up a territory, how you govern it, how you organize a society on a practical, local level. This wasn't philosophy. He was looking for the nuts and bolts.
Okay, so from those basic building blocks, Atatürk starts to scale up his study. He turns his attention to the biggest, most complex political structures in all of history: empires. And here, he was looking for lessons in both their incredible triumphs and their catastrophic decay.
So, of course, he studied the greats. Here we see him reading about the Mughal Emperor Akbar, a ruler who was famous for his brilliant administration, his military skill, and his policies of religious tolerance. When Atatürk underlines this, he's basically flagging a model of what successful leadership looks like.
But he was also really interested in the economic engines of power. He's taking notes on how the conqueror Timur made his capital Samarkand a world center for commerce and industry. He's reading about the magnificent public works of Shah Jahan, like the Taj Mahal. He gets that a thriving state needs more than just a big army. It needs a buzzing economy and a vibrant culture.
And this is where the study gets even more critical. Because for every lesson he learned about what to do, there was an equally powerful one about what not to do. He knew that even the most glorious empires could be followed by a sudden, complete collapse.
So let's just stick with that example of Shah Jahan. On this page, Atatürk is reading about the construction of the Taj Mahal. I mean, it's the ultimate symbol of imperial splendor, a monument to power that took decades to build. It represents the absolute peak of an empire's glory.
But then, just a few pages later in the very same book, he underlines this: the fact that Shah Jahan, the great builder, was overthrown by his own son and left to die in captivity. The man who built one of the world's wonders ended his life as a prisoner. The lesson couldn't be more clear. Power is fragile, and glory can vanish in an instant. Atatürk was definitely taking notes.
So that brings us to our final and maybe most important case study. After looking deep into the past, Atatürk turned his focus to a struggle that was happening in his own time, which gave him a real-world blueprint for the challenges of getting true independence.
He's reading this book, The Drama of Egypt, published just a few years after he founded the Turkish Republic. This wasn't ancient history anymore. This was a contemporary political breakdown of a nation trying to do the exact same thing Turkey was, break free from foreign control and become a truly sovereign state.
And right here, he zeroes in on the fine print. Britain says Egypt is independent, but Ataturk underlines the 4 conditions they kept for themselves: control over communications, defense, protecting foreign interests. This was independence in name only. It was sovereignty with huge strings attached.
Can you see why this was so important for him? He was watching, in real time, the playbook that a colonial power uses. He was learning the language of control, the legal traps, the political moves used to keep influence even after independence is granted. This was a live masterclass in international power politics.
And this underlined question from the book, it just says it all. It cuts right to the heart of everything. What good is a republic if a foreign power still pulls the strings? For Ataturk, the answer was simple. It's worth nothing. This just confirmed his deepest belief. Sovereignty had to be absolute, no exceptions. Okay, so let's pull all these different threads together. From the foundations of ancient Sumeria to the fall of the Mughals to the modern struggles of Egypt, what was the final blueprint that came out of all this intense study?
Well, the final blueprint looked something like this. First, you have to understand the timeless foundations of how states work. Second, you have to learn just as much from the triumphs of a leader like Akbar as you do from the failures of someone like Shah Jahan. Third, you analyze what's happening right now, like in Egypt, for practical lessons. And the biggest takeaway, the non-negotiable principle, true sovereignty has to be absolute, because Ataturk understood that a nation's future isn't built in a vacuum. It's built on a deep, critical understanding of the past.
And in the end, that's what made Ataturk's reading so powerful. He didn't just passively consume information. He wrestled with it. He questioned it. He synthesized it. His library really was his laboratory, and all those books were the raw materials he used to architect a new future for an entire people.
You know, it leaves you with a final thought. If one person's reading habits could provide the intellectual foundation for a whole country, it really makes you wonder about the power of the ideas we choose to engage with ourselves. If a library is a blueprint for action, what are we all reading today?